Hi, welcome to another interesting geography class. My name is Sonia Wanze. Our theme for today's lesson is map reading and interpretation, and our topic for today, settlements, part 1. Before we go into our lesson proper, let's take a look at the lesson objectives. By the end of this lesson, you should be able to identify types of settlements, describe each settlement type in terms of population, economy, administration, etc., and explain the influence of soil, weather, etc. on settlement location. Now let's get into our lesson proper. Humans are social beings that tend to live around their own kind. This has made them look for areas that will benefit them in different ways. Settlements start in different areas for different purposes. Some people dwell in an area temporarily or permanently, depending on what they are looking for. In this lesson, we'll be looking at what settlement means and the different types of settlements that humans live in. These are images showing some examples of settlements. From the images, you can see that humans live and cohabit with one another for different purposes. A settlement is simply a form of human dwelling where people live and interact with each other. Settlements can range from a single house to a large city that has so many buildings. Like I said earlier, someone can decide to live in a place on a temporal basis or take it as a permanent residence. There are two major types of settlements. We have the urban settlements and the rural settlements. Let's look at them in detail. An urban settlement is simply a type of settlement that has high population. People that live in urban settlements engage in secondary and tertiary economic activities such as banking, manufacturing, and even food production. The life in urban settlements is usually fast and very busy. For example, if you live in a city or a very big town, you will see that the town is a place that is always busy with so much traffic and noise due to the high population of people living in those areas. Some examples of urban settlements are towns, cities, and metropolis, while examples of urban settlements in Nigeria are Port Harcourt, Benin, Lagos, Abuja, and so on. Now let's take a look at some types of urban settlements. The first type of urban settlement we'll be looking at in this lesson is the town. A town is simply a built-up area that has a local government. One unique feature about a town is that it is bigger than a village but smaller than a city. Some examples of towns in Nigeria are Borokiri, Mushin, Agege, and so on. The second type of urban settlement is the city. Cities are very large towns with dense population. Population in cities range from hundreds to thousands of people. Some examples of cities in Nigeria are Port Harcourt, Ibadan, Benin, and so on. The third type of urban settlement we'll be looking at in this lesson is conurbation. Conurbation is formed when different towns come together or merge. Examples of conurbations are Lagos and Accra. The megalopolis is the last type of urban settlement. This is made up of different cities coming together to form a very large one. A megalopolis has population of up to 10 million. Having seen the meaning of urban settlements, let's take a look at some characteristics of urban settlements. The first characteristic we'll be looking at is population. Population in urban settlements is usually very high, ranging from thousands of people to millions of people. For example, if you live in a city or a very large town, you will notice that so many people are also living there, leading to very high population. Secondly, economy. People living in urban settlements, such as cities and towns, engage in secondary and tertiary economic activities, such as food production and processing, manufacturing, banking, and construction. The administration of urban settlements is usually developed in a systematic way with different arms of government overseeing them. For amenities, urban settlements such as towns and cities have good social amenities such as good roads, good schools, electricity, and pipe-borne water. And lastly, culture. People living in urban areas or settlements usually come from different backgrounds and they speak different languages. The rural settlement is simply an opposite of the urban settlement. Rural settlements are located at the outskirts of urban settlements and they have low population. That is, few number of people live in rural areas or rural settlements. People living in rural settlements, such as villages and hamlets, engage in simple and relaxed lifestyle. They also engage in economic activities such as fishing and farming. These are images showing some examples of what rural settlements look like. Now let's take a look at some few types of rural settlements. The first type of rural settlement is the homestead. This is simply an isolated building where few people live. Homesteads are usually created where there are geographical barriers such as hills and bushes. Homesteads have few people living in them. The second type of rural settlement is the hamlet. The hamlet is larger than the homestead. It is another type of rural settlement that contains few buildings and population less than 100. This is an image showing a hamlet. From the image, you can see that the buildings are arranged in a nucleated or clustered settlement pattern. Lastly, we have the village. Villages are formed when different hamlets come together. Villages are also another type of rural settlement made up of few people from a few hundreds to a few thousands. Characteristics of rural settlements. Population. The population of rural settlements are usually very low. For example, you cannot compare the population of your village to the population of a very big city. This is because only few people live in rural areas. People living in rural settlements, such as villages and hamlets, engage in primary economic activities such as fishing, lumbering, and mining. Next, we have administration. Rural settlements, such as villages, are ruled and governed by chiefs and elders. These chiefs and elders help to take care of the day-to-day activities in rural settlements and also help to settle disputes. Amenities. Rural settlements have poor social amenities. They lack good roads, good school, and even electricity. And lastly, culture. People living in rural areas share the same cultural background. For example, in your village or your community, you find out that you all speak the same language. This is because you share the same cultural background. Before an area can be considered fit to be a settlement, there are several factors that come into play. Now we'll take a look at some factors that affect settlement location. Firstly, we have relief. Relief is simply the shape or topography of the land. Areas that have broad and flat land are usually fit for settlement. For example, Farmers like these kinds of area that will favor them in agriculture. Number two, adequate water supply. Humans and animals need water for survival. Areas that have constant and adequate water supply are usually fit for settlement. The water in these areas can be used for farming purposes or even for agricultural purposes to water plants and feed animals. Thirdly, fertile soil. The presence of fertile soil in an area will attract people to dwell or settle in those areas. Fertile soil is good for agriculture because man needs food to survive. Next, shelter. Areas that are sheltered from natural hazards such as storms are usually good spots for settlements. The fence is another factor that affects settlement location. Humans tend to live together in order to guarantee safety because they believe there is safety in numbers. Humans also like to live in places that are well guarded to protect them from enemies and predators. Lastly, weather. Areas that have cool and good weather conditions are usually good spots for settlements, while areas with harsh weather conditions are not good and do not attract people to settle there. For example, arid regions such as deserts usually have low population because the climatic condition over there is not favorable for human survival, while tropical regions have high population. We've come to the end of this lesson, but before we go, let's take a quick summary on what we learned during the lesson. We learned that a settlement is any form of human dwelling where people live and interact through activities such as trading, agriculture, education, entertainment, etc. We also learned that there are two major types of settlements, namely urban settlements and rural settlements. And lastly, we learned that some factors affecting settlement location are relief, adequate water supply, shelter, etc. Now let's test ourselves with some few questions. Question 1. Dash settlement has little or no basic amenities and few people. A. Urban. B. Suburban. C. Rural. Or D. National. The correct answer is C. Rural. Question 2. Which of the following is not a factor affecting settlement location? A. Skin complexion. B. Relief. C. Availability of water. Or D. Soil fertility. The correct answer is A. Skin complexion. I trust by now you can identify different types of settlements and also state factors affecting settlement location. See you in our next class. Bye.